Count them, 18 sources that were not identified. I just think that is journalistically irresponsible.
Jane, doesn't the American public have a right to know if the administration has backed off the plan to capture Osama bin Laden?
I think that, this may be considered heresy. I think it actually was a public service because it talks about how there were disputes between the CIA and the State Department, how our, Musharraf, we may not have pressed him hard enough. These guys, basically, there's an on-the-record guy saying they've regrouped in Pakistan. They're ready to come at us again. I think that's worth knowing, and I agree with Patricia, somebody in the Department of Defense or State who was frustrated by the infighting leaked to this story. So, take those guys to jail if you think you want to take somebody to jail.
Well, under the Espionage Act, you can actually take both the leakers and the New York Times to jail, and that's what happened during World War I. A war, by the way,
but how does it endanger national security to have that story?
That we were victorious in. We endanger national security when you leak sources and methods. For example, the story that Cal alluded to before about the wiretaps across the world.
That's a different deal.
Well, okay. I think, just a hunch, that the New York Times hates the Bush administration so much that they want us to lose. That's what I think.
The New York Times was complicit with the Bush administration when we were going into Iraq. All of those unnamed sources, Scooter, Libby, they were protecting the Bush administration.
In the last 4 years, last 5 years, they have, shall we say, changed their tune. Judith Miller and others are gone. And now it's nothing but people who just have such a grudge against Bush that they want to see America fail.
I really didn't.
You don't know why it's out there.
I didn't. I mean, I think the wiretapping story is a legitimate question whether they should have leaked methods. I mean, I viewed this as a story with a lot of people in the administration who were frustrated with not being able to go ahead and not have commandos go take out Osama bin Laden. How is that a problem?
The press has switched sides. We are no longer the good guys as we were during World War II when there was a censorship board, and mostly the press cooperated with the government because they knew we were on the same side.
But Cal, isn't it also the role of the press to be a watchdog of government? And in this case, if they're not really looking for Osama bin Laden, shouldn't the American public know about that?
Well, there's a difference between being a watchdog and peeing on the fire plug, and that's what the New York Times is doing.
Thank you for running with that analogy for me.
Wait a minute.
And as evidenced by the fact that the New York Times was all upset that Valerie Plame got named years ago in the Scooter Libby case, and then they happily named one of the CIA interrogators.
They didn't leak they didn't leak where they were planning to go.
Every chance they get, they stick it to the administration, which means sticking it to the American war effort.
But somebody in the administration wants it out there. Somebody in the administration is worried that we are not going after Osama bin Laden, even though the president says that we are.
Probably a Clinton holdover.
And Jane, it was interesting even just to see a story on the war, about the war on terror, on the front page of the New York Times, because it doesn't really get that much coverage anymore.
Well, and it doesn't, and I think, you can fault the media for not paying attention to Pakistan. Suddenly we're surprised that Afghanistan's blowing up again. I mean, we tend to focus on one thing, and sometimes we don't inform the American people about what else is happening.
Yeah, the media don't focus on things that are going well. They only focus on things that are going bad. So Iraq's going well. No more stories from Iraq. Let's focus on Afghanistan.
Jim, it was interesting. You both have talked about the other stories that the New York Times has leaked that were classified information. I remember one back in 2006 that got a lot of attention. It was about the SWIFT program. That was the terrorist financial tracking program. And arguably, that gave information to the terrorists that may even have prevented them from getting caught. Who does this story hurt?
Well, I mean, it's a little unclear, but it certainly undermines the trust that officials around the Pentagon and the administration in general have, and also the Congress, because the Congress is usually briefed in on these things, as to whether they can trust the people in the room. Hey, can we talk about this in this room, or will I be reading about it in the New York Times tomorrow? And if the answer is you can't trust the people in you, you can't have a war decision. We can't win a war in this kind of media environment.
But 6 years have elapsed. We're not talking about troop movements yesterday. We're talking about an effort that has not happened.
No, we're talking about terrorist movements tomorrow.
And we're talking about people who know all of these details intimately, and they've decided to leak it because they don't trust what's going on.
They took an oath not to do this, and if they can't get prosecuted for it, they should. And maybe the people who are facilitating this should get prosecuted as well.
All right, we'll have to leave it there because it's time for another break, and we'll be back with this.
The Uptown Girl.